But I think the klaxon is going off.
Okay.
Mars Hour has begun.
So, Mars Hour, this is the time where you guys in your classrooms or wherever you are get to do your activities that you've been planning, all the resources that are there online, so you can do that. However, keep us in the top right-hand corner of your screens because I'm going to be joined, or we're going to be joined, by loads of special guests. Right now, we've got, who's there? It's Tim Peake. We've got Tim Peake live in your classroom.
Hello.
Tim, nice to see you. How are you?
Hello, Dallas. Hello, Izzy. I'm great, thanks. How are you doing? Great to join you today.
Really
nice to see you on Mars Day again. You'd love this, Tim. This is my favourite thing. We're at Goonhilly, and I'm sure you've been to Goonhilly. You'll know what Goonhilly is all about. But this is they gave me this printout of every single space mission ever, starting at space mission number 1 in 1957. All the way to now, and it's getting increasingly thicker.
Dallas has been reading.
I'd love to know, Dallas. What are we up to right now?
Well, actually, interestingly, this actually stops at 2018, and I've worked out that if you were to print everything in the last 5 years, this would be double the thickness.
Yeah.
So 1957 to 2018. But we're sending so much stuff into space now for all kinds of reasons, all kinds of exciting things, that it's just getting more and more busy, and the printer is doing more and more work. They're running out of ink. I thought I'd do a test for you, actually, because, you're a space historian. Space mission number 1, can you remember the date for that, roughly?
Space mission number 1, 1957. But,
yeah, correct.
So, what date, though?
It was...
April?
No, sorry? It was October, 4th of October.
October, was it?
Yeah.
Sorry, failed on that one.
No, this is one. What about this one? The 15th of December 2015 I've got down here.
No idea. No surprise, Dallas.
Let's have a look. Soyuz TMA 19M. You're in the book.
You're in the book.
One I was sitting on.
Yeah.
There you go.
I remember now. How could I forget?
Thank you so much for joining us. We've got loads and loads of questions, and we've got thousands of people who are joining us from all over the world. So where do we start, Izzy?
Right, so let's go. We've got lots and lots of questions. We're going to say hello to Year 5 at St Joseph's Primary in Sheffield. So I think let's jump to this first question. It's anonymous, but Tim, we've got a question here. How do astronauts consume food?
How do we do what? Sorry, it's a bit quiet.
Consume food.
How do we consume food? Consuming food
through the mouth.
Yes.
Good question. Actually, it comes back to to go back to those little bits of history which are fascinating. In those early days, I mean, 12th of April 1961, when Yuri Gagarin went up, nobody knew if humans were even going to be able to breathe in space, or even if the heart would continue beating normally, if blood would be circulating around the body. And so when it came to consuming food in the early days of spaceflight, it was all just, well, mush it up into tubes and you can suck it out of a tube. And that seemed the easiest way to consume food, which I guess it is an easy way to consume food, and it's easy on the digestive system, but who likes eating mushed up food out of the tube? So thankfully, over the years, we've got a bit better, and now we've got food. It's like camping food in foil pouches. We've got some canned food, although we don't like taking tins up. Tins create a lot of rubbish and they're heavy. And pot noodles, that kind of stuff, rehydrated food.
Yeah.
Stuff you
it is a good question as well. And presumably the longer the missions are, I mean, if you think anyone who's been on an expedition or a camping mission knows how important food is, not just for keeping you alive physically, but actually for the soul, for keeping your motivation going. It's food is an important psychological
really
component.
If anyone wants to do an experiment, just try going for 3 or 4 days just eating mushed up food and see how you feel at the end of it.
It's terrible.
You're crying out for that bite. You want a pizza, you want to bite into something, to chew something, to have some texture.
That's it.
And it's really important for your morale.
I've still, somewhere under my bed somewhere, Tim, I've got one of your Heston Blumenthal bacon sandwiches in a tin, gathering dust. One day I'm going to have a party and I'm going to open it up and see if it's...
You better hurry up. I think those things are going rapidly out of date now.
It's very out of date. It's got the sell-by date on it. I'll do a live Instagram.
I'm sure
the sandwich.
people would love that.
Anyway, so Izzy, sorry, I'm rabbiting.
No, but I was going to say, I mean, Tim, you're a very busy man, like an astronaut, an author. So what are you working on, like, at the moment? What are you up to? as the day in the life of an astronaut?
Yeah, Izzy, a number of different plates spinning. So I've been writing books. I've got another children's book coming out in October this year, a non-fiction following on from the Cosmic Diary of Our Incredible Universe. So that's the Cosmic Diary of a space explorer, which has been great fun doing. I've got a live tour, a new show coming out in September. So that's Astronauts: The Quest to Explore Space.
Comedy show, bit of stand-up comedy.
Why not?
Yeah,
let's throw a bit of stand-up in. Yeah, absolutely. Dallas, you can come along and do the comedy.
I'll be your wingman. I'll be your warm-up act. I'll get booed off.
Yeah. So all sorts of things. And I'm also always working closely with ESA, European Space Agency, and the UK Space Agency on helping promote and support space. And at the moment, I'm working with a company called Axiom Space as well, which many people may not have heard of. We've all heard of SpaceX and Elon Musk and Amazon, Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin, but Axiom are a lesser known company, but they're actually building the next space station, which is really exciting. It's going to bolt on to the existing International Space Station. The first module in 2026 is going to bolt on, and the new space station will be built from there. So I'm doing some work with Axiom Space because we're going to try and send an all-British mission for crew members up to the International Space Station at some time in the next couple of years, which is really exciting.
It's really exciting. And when are we going to get a kind of yay for that? Have we got a green light for that? Is it going to happen? When does it get signed off?
It's a kind of gradual yay for that, I guess. We've had the signing of a memorandum of understanding
between
and the UK Space Agency. Axiom and the UK Space Agency are now officially talking to each other, working on this program. We've had the official call for science and technology that went out a couple of weeks ago from the UK Space Agency. So now we've got British scientists and organizations putting in their ideas for this mission. The call for education outreach will come out soon. And about April, May time, NASA will actually formally put that mission onto their manifest. So you'll see it, have a slot where it's dedicated to go to space. So it's one of these things that kind of just gradually gets a bit closer and closer and closer to the big yay moment.
And are you going to? Will you be bossing it? Are you going to be commander? Are you going to?
Well, the crew hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say that.
Okay.
But I was asked by Jonathan Amos the same question, and he said, well, Tim, NASA allow only flown astronauts to dock to the International Space Station. So if it's an all-British mission, it kind of narrows the pool down to maybe just one.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Okay, well, that's you heard it here. You heard it here first. Right, we've got some more questions.
So let's take this question from Scorby Academy, Year 2. They'd like to know, what does it feel like to go into space, and why did you want to go to the ISS?
It's an incredible feeling going into space, and it's the culmination of so many different things because it's something you've dreamt of for so long. You've worked so hard for it, you've trained for it. But the actual moment of sitting on the rocket and launching into space it lives up to every expectation, and it even far exceeds it, really. The kind of excitement, the adrenaline, that feeling of raw power as the rocket lifts off, and the acceleration, and it goes on and on and on. 8 minutes and 48 seconds might not seem that long, but it's longer than we've been talking for already.
Yeah.
So you imagine doing 4Gs and more of acceleration for the length of time we've already been talking, and you're getting up to 17,500 miles per hour. So it's an amazing experience. But then the other flip side of the coin is when the engine cuts out, you go from incredible noise and power and excitement and adrenaline to this beautiful, calm, quiet, serene, gracefully gliding over the continents in weightlessness, and that is just magical.
We've got a question this is from Acorn Digital Learning, Helen Walker. This is a good question, particularly as we've been talking about astronauts going further afield. How are astronauts protected against ionized radiation from the sun, especially with the solar maximum, which I think is next year, the solar maximum, about to occur anytime soon? Like going to Mars, for example, I mean, crikey, it's a long way.
Yeah.
It is a long way. It's a great question from Helen, and it's one that we're really paying a lot of attention to and working on at the moment, because the International Space Station, it's 400 kilometers, so it's still within part of Earth's magnetosphere, which means that the magnetosphere is protecting us a little bit from solar radiation. But we do have extra shielded areas. Our crew quarters on board the space station give us a bit of better protection from solar radiation and also galactic cosmic rays, GCRs. These are particles coming from outer space, from maybe neutron star collisions and explosions. So they can be very high energetic, very powerful pieces of radiation. So to go to Mars, to put that in context, 400 kilometers is the International Space Station. 400,000 kilometers is the moon, and Mars can be at times up to 4 million kilometers. So it's a long, long way. Yeah. And to protect ourselves, we're going to have to design our spacecraft that gives us better shielding. So that generally means heavier spacecraft. So it's a case of trying to find the technologies that allow us to protect the crews with the lightest weight material that we can, or possibly using water that we're going to need anyway on the mission. Water is a very good agent for shielding radiation from radiation. So, but the more techniques we can have for detecting the radiation, and the better techniques we can have for protecting the crew is going to be absolutely vital.
Yeah, because that's the thing, it's all about balance, isn't it? The more stuff you take, the harder it is to launch that rocket, and it's just got to get that balance just right.
Yeah.
What other questions we've got, Dallas?
I'm slightly fascinated by the Mars question. I mean, Tim, as you said it, 400 kilometers to the ISS, 400,000 to the moon. Those sorts of distance, if something goes wrong, you can get home. There are kind of abort scenarios where you'd be able to, get back. Obviously we think about things like Apollo 13. If something goes wrong on the ISS, you've got a lifeboat there that you can get back to Earth. But if you're going to Mars, you're pretty stuck there, aren't you? Getting back is going to be pretty tough if something goes wrong.
You are. That's why there's a huge amount of commitment for that mission. That's why the Artemis program going back to the moon in a couple of years' time, although some people see that as a delay in getting to Mars, it does enable us to really refine some of the techniques that we're going to need in terms of habitation modules living on the surface of the moon for a long period of time, which will set us up better for Mars. Because you're right, Dallas, when we go to Mars, wow, I mean, what a commitment. It's probably a 3-year mission for those first crews if you want to have a meaningful stay on the surface of Mars. And because Mars and Earth only line up once every about 2 years or so, then, very soon after you've launched the crew and they're on their way, Mars is actually a long, long way away from Earth. So Earth is on the kind of the inside of Mars, if you like, in terms of our orbital path. So Earth's going fast around the moon, around the sun, sorry. We go round once a year, Mars goes round once every 2 years.
Yeah. And on a similar thread, we've got an anonymous question here, but they say, how do astronauts get home, and are there frightening moments? What was that moment like for you when you returned home?
Yes, I mean, getting home is all about setting up the trajectory correctly. So if you're coming back from the moon or coming back from Mars, then you've got to get that initial trajectory correct. And you're obviously going to be going very fast. And if we want to cut the journey time down, then we need to go as fast as possible. But that creates a problem, because the faster you come into a planet's atmosphere, then the hotter it's going to be as you hit those gases, and you use those gases of the atmosphere to slow down. You're generating a lot of heat, so you need lots of protection from heat shields, and you need to get the angle of re-entry correct. That determines the heat, and it determines the amount of G-force you're going to feel on re-entry. So we have to pay careful attention when you're coming back into a planet's atmosphere. You've got to get the speed right. You've got to get the angle right. And so that all needs to be set up very, very carefully by the crew.
We're going to talk to Megan Christian, one of the new UK astronauts. She's in the Reserve Astronaut Corps. And we're going to talk to her a little bit about astronaut training. But we've got a question for you about astronaut training, and it's from Anonymous. Lots of anonymous people.
Yes, leave
your
names in there. We want to know who's with us.
Anyway, they want to know about your training. How much training did you have to do, and was it tough? It's a broad question, I know, but were there any sort of hair-raising training moments you could share?
There are a few, but the training generally, I would have said it was just so much fun and amazing. And what's really interesting these days, Dallas, of course, is the training depends on how long you're going to go to space for and what you're going to do up there. So we've got some commercial space flight participant or space tourist missions, if you like, where you can get away with very, very little training, just enough emergency training to understand how to operate the spacecraft in your spacesuit. But if you're going to be a full-time crew member on board the International Space Station, then you need to be able to fly the spacecraft, dock the spacecraft, do a spacewalk, be the doctor, be the dentist, be the plumber, be the engineer, clean the space station, maintain the space station. And the jobs list just goes up and up and up. And so the training gets bigger and bigger and longer and longer.
That's really
so
interesting.
I had to train for 2.5 years. Sorry, Dan.
No, I was just thinking, in the old days, the job description of the astronaut, if you go back to, you mentioned Yuri Gagarin, and if you think about the first group of American astronauts, the job was to be a test pilot, fly the spacecraft and stay alive.
Yeah.
And maybe make some observations. Now you've got to be a stand-up comedian. You've got to be a TV presenter. You've got to be able to clean the loo. You've got to be able to do everything. It's like, what does it take to be an astronaut? You have to be pretty well-rounded.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of tasks, and that's why if you look at the selection that we have now, and I was part of the team that selected McGann and her classmates, so it was brilliant being on the other side of the table. But what's fascinating is seeing how we've changed our processes for selecting astronauts, because you don't need to be a test pilot. Flying skills are still relevant for flying a spacecraft, and that's great. But if you don't have those skills, we can teach you those skills. Getting to and from the space station is 2 days out of a 6-month, maybe a year-long stay on board the space station. So for the rest of the time, you're going to be doing all those other jobs.
Yeah. And did you know that you always wanted to be an astronaut?
No, I really didn't, Izzy. I mean, for me, growing up, I was born in 72. So in the 80s, I was watching the shuttle missions go up and loving that and seeing the space program. Watching Mir space station be built. Remember watching Helen Sharman fly to the Mir space station as the first Brit. But it didn't seem like a career path that we could have. Helen's was a one-off mission. We weren't involved in the human spaceflight program. We weren't part of ESA's human spaceflight. So for me, I went down the flying route, and that was my absolute driving passion. It wasn't until much later in life, in my 30s, that I realized actually the door was starting to open to become an astronaut. And yeah, from that moment onwards, my sights were firmly fixed.
Amazing.
Great. I think we've run out of time.
I think so.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you both. It's been lovely joining you.
It's been great. We're going to talk to McGann a little bit later on about her experiences. I think she's actually been at the Johnson Space Centre looking at sort of neutral buoyancy and doing all kinds of exciting things. So we're going to hear from her.
Can't wait.
Yeah, but thank you very much. You're free to go. You're free to go and work on that application for Axiom, and we'll get you up into space again.
Best regards.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Shall we do some shout-outs to some schools?
We've got so much shout-outs to do. Endless shout-outs. Hundreds of thousands of shout-outs.
There's so many of you, so thank you so much. Let's say to Elliot Huxley Primary School, hello, hello. To the Romsey School as well, thank you so much for joining us. And the Acorn Digital Learning Group as well.
Yes, thank you, Helen, for your space radio.
Yes, they were all really... And St Martin's Primary School, Willow Class, hello to you too.
Good. A few things coming up. Don't forget, we are live here at Goonhilly. We're going to do a bit of a chat with some of the people who work at Goonhilly in a moment, whilst you are doing your projects. I'm fascinated to know what their projects are going to be.
I know. Well, I'm actually about to go and find out what they are.
Yeah.
We've got some school kids are with us today, so I'm just going to nip off, see what they're doing, and leave you in charge if that's
fantastic.
all right.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Also, don't forget, coming up, we're going to be patching into Mars Express. Now, Mars Express is a spacecraft that is currently orbiting Mars, looking at the surface of Mars, understanding better the surface of Mars. And we're going to use Goonhilly, some of the big radio dishes, to actually talk to it. And hopefully we're going to get some live photographs from Mars for you. I'm not sure when that's coming up, certainly perhaps in the next sort of half an hour or so, so stay tuned for that. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the moon later on. But just while we're on the subject of Goonhilly and Mars Express, we've got Andrew Coates and David Southwood here. Can you hear me?
We can. Hi, Dallas.
Hey,
yeah.
nice to...
Certainly.
Great. Just thank you very much for joining us on Mars Day. Today is a day we're talking about Mars, and we're going to be talking about all the things we like to talk about Mars, life on Mars we like to talk about. We like to talk about things like the future human exploration of Mars. But Mars Express, can one of you tell me a little bit about Mars Express and the story of that, what it is, the type of work it's doing in the Martian orbit at the moment?
Okay, well, I'm wearing my Mars Express shirt.
Perfect.
That I think I last wore when I launched the spacecraft back in 2003. It's been a fantastic mission, and I'm just delighted to find Goonhilly is involved in it now. It's very important. It's no longer perhaps at the top of ESA's list, but it's very important to me. It was a magical mission. I loved the images we got back, the first stereo images. So you could play around with those and make it feel you were flying over Mars. It's one of the most fantastic experiences for me, imagining flying over Mars. So Mars Express was a really big success. It had, however, I'm sad to say, one small blemish, and that is we British put a lander because there was this feeling in Britain you shouldn't go to Mars without landing on it. And that was Beagle 2. And I'm sad to say Beagle 2 did land successfully exactly where it was supposed to land. Unfortunately, ET couldn't phone home. The antenna that would have transmitted the signals back did not unfold, probably just because of the amount of dust around preventing the mechanism to work. One of the saddest things in my whole career, and I'm fairly sure it's one of the saddest things in Andrew's career as well, because he was involved in Mars Express also, but he was deeply involved with Beagle 2. And so Mars Express has gone on. Beagle still sits on the floor at Mars, but Mars Express has gone on from strength to strength.
Well, that's great. Andrew,
the imaging,
yeah.
And it has completely changed the science of Mars. Its discovery of clays on the surface showed that Mars had a very wet history long ago and far away, maybe. But of course, that's driving where spacecraft are going to go, particularly to land in the future. So the Curiosity rover, Jezero crater, that's due to Mars Express's discovery that it's there. And I'm not going to say anything about what Andrew's going to tell you, except to say I'm heartbroken that his camera that he had on Beagle 2 never got to show how good it was. But I think maybe he's going to get a second chance.
Maybe so, one day we'll be able to visit the Beagle 2 landing site and get it up and running. Like
well,
kind of
maybe one day, but
actually,
yeah. So I mean, it was great to get Beagle 2 there and indeed landed successfully, as was found out a few years later. I've got a model here of the Mars Express spacecraft actually, which has the communications antenna on the front. The Beagle 2 actually has left, but there's all the other instruments on it, and one of them was the Aspera 3 instrument that is looking at plasma escape from Mars and looking at atmospheric erosion. So we had a small involvement in that. But the Beagle 2 involvement, so I was principal investigator for the stereo camera system, which was able to look at would have been able to look at Mars. What that did was actually enabled us to develop the technology for this. So this is the panoramic camera for the Rosalind Franklin rover. That's the ExoMars rover, and we have two stereo cameras here. This is a 1-to-1 model this time. So these are two wide-angle cameras. There's also a high-resolution camera. We've packed as much science as we can into this camera system, and doing geology and atmospheric science. And that is for launch in 2028 now with the US, and landing in 2030. So we're very much looking forward to that fantastic mission coming up in the future. And the really new thing about that is drilling underneath the surface up to 2 meters to look for signs of life.
Is the reason we have to drill so deep into Mars, is that where, if we will find life, is that where it's going to be rather than the surface? Why not at the surface?
That's the best bet, because the surface of Mars is very harsh. So every day, the temperature changes from about 0 to 10 on the day side to about -100, -120 at night. But the main thing is the atmosphere is very thin because of all that atmospheric erosion having gone on. And that means that cosmic rays from space can get to the surface, and also solar energetic particles from the sun. So that means the radiation environment is very severe. So over billions of years, we think conditions were right 3.8 billion years ago for life to be there, potentially on Mars, to have started. And that's what we're looking for. And so looking underneath the surface gives us the best chance of actually finding signs of that which have survived. So 3.8 billion years ago, that's when life was starting on Earth. And that's why we think life could have potentially started on Mars at that time. So ExoMars, Rosalind Franklin is going to look for it.
So for you as scientists, is that the fundamental question? Because we get a lot of these questions from people sending questions today. Will we find life on Mars? Is there life on Mars? That question just seems to be driving a lot of the science, doesn't it?
It's, of course, not the only question. I mean, as David said, Mars Express has done a huge amount of imaging. There's also the radar, the Marsis radar, which allows you to look underneath the surface and allows you to look at the ionosphere. So there's lots of instruments on board which are really very capable. Also, Mars Express was involved in the discovery of methane in the atmosphere, which is very interesting. But so it's trying to find out the environment, really. And I mean, we're on Earth, and we have life on Earth. We don't know of life anywhere else in the universe. So we're trying to find out, one of the questions with the missions is, were conditions right, or are conditions right anywhere else in the universe for life? And Mars is one of those possibilities. Also Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Enceladus now at Saturn, that's another possibility. Possibly Titan, but it's probably a bit cold. But nevertheless, some fantastic science which we can do to find out our place in the universe.
We're running out of time, but the one question that I've been wondering about is, we've talked a little bit about early Earth and early Mars were quite similar. Mars was a much wetter place, a much warmer place. What happened to Mars? Do we know kind of geologically why Mars went from being that state, a much more Earth-like planet, to the state it's in at the moment?
Well, one big thing is that Mars lost its magnetic field all of a sudden, around about 3.8 to 4 billion years ago. And we think that's because it cooled off much quicker than the Earth did. And so the core basically froze. And so it doesn't have a global magnetic field like the Earth has. And that protects us from the cosmic rays and so on. So Mars lost that magnetic field. And that's really what initiated the climate change.
Great. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you so much. We're going to be looking at some Mars Express live images here at Goonhilly. We've locked onto Mars Express. We're downloading the images at the moment, so we'll be able to have a look. I'm absolutely amazed. If we think about the history of exploring Mars, way back to the days of the Mariner expeditions, which I think, were they the 1960s perhaps, or perhaps the 1970s, I forget.
Early 70s, yeah.
But it's just quite extraordinary how technology has revealed Mars to us in sharper and sharper focus. I think the very first Mariner image of Mars was just a kind of grainy black and white picture. We couldn't really tell what it was. And of course, we can go even further back, looking through a telescope. Famously, Percival Lowell thought he'd seen canals on Mars and evidence of vegetation. But actually, we've managed to bring Mars very close to us in a single lifetime, really.
Absolutely. And, thanks to David for getting Mars Express launched as part of the European Space Agency's program. We've got some amazing data, and looking at now, of course, we have Perseverance on the surface of Mars. We have potentially Mars sample return coming back, so we're getting much more information about Mars. It's a fantastic time to be working on Mars.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed. You're free to go. It's been a pleasure to have you on Mars Day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, coming up soon, we're going to have our pictures live from the Martian surface. I'm not sure exactly when we're getting them, but somebody hopefully will talk to me in my ear and tell me when they're going to happen. Coming up next, we've got, very excitingly, we've got the Director General of the JAXA Institute of Space, that's the Japanese space agency, with a little bit of an update. We've been talking about Mars a lot, but did you know Mars also has 2 moons? I'm delighted to welcome Masaki Fujimoto, who's the Director General of JAXA. Masaki, thank you very much for joining us on Mars Day. We've got people tuned in from all over the world to listen to you. I'm delighted for you to be here. Thank you for giving up your time. I'm just wondering if you could tell us, I think most people, or a lot of people, don't really know about the moons of Mars. Perhaps you could tell us what they are and what your mission is.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to everybody interested in Mars. And our mission is by the name MMX, Martian Moon Exploration. And our plan is to get samples back from the surface of Phobos, one of the Martian moons. Mars has 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, and they do look like an asteroid. And our institute, we have already performed the sample return mission from an asteroid. And naturally, we're interested in getting samples back from one of the moons, which does look like an asteroid.
Why? So it's funny when you look at the 2 moons. I can't remember. One is Phobos and Deimos, I think they're called.
Yes.
And you think about our moon that's orbiting the Earth. Our moon is unusually large, isn't it? We have quite a strangely large moon for all kinds of reasons. Mars's moons are nothing like our moon, are they?
True. So our moon, we think that it's made by giant impact. But when it comes to Phobos or Deimos, we just don't know what their origin is.
Yeah.
So our mission is first to review their origins. And then once we understood the origin, we think we can reveal what was happening between the gateway position at the position between the boundary between the inner solar system and the outer solar system.
Right. So actually, by having a sample return from a Mars moon, the objective is to understand more, not just about the moons themselves, but the entire formation of the solar system.
True. So everybody's interested in Mars.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, who's interested in the origin of the solar system, Mars can be regarded as a place sitting at the outer edge of the inner system. And the connection between the outer part of the solar system and the inner part of the solar system did matter to make our planet habitable. That's what we think. So Mars is really at the right position to witness what was happening, what material exchange was happening between the outer part of the solar system and inner part of the solar system to make our planet habitable. That's the story we're pursuing.
Yeah. We've had a question actually, which I think is really interesting, and they've been looking at the pictures of the Martian moons, and one of the pupils wants to know, why isn't it round? Question mark.
Yeah, true. That's a good question.
Yeah,
so you have to ask the size. The size of Phobos is only 20 kilometer-ish from edge to edge, while our moon or our planet, it's huge. So when the planetary body becomes huge, they become a sphere shape. But when it's small, it doesn't have to be. So they must be in that potato-looking like shape. Yeah. That's also one of the aspects. That's why we suspect that it could have been an asteroid before captured by Mars.
Ah, that's interesting. So not part of Mars itself, not formed like the Earth's moon, but actually captured from the early formation of the solar system. It was captured by Mars's gravity.
True. We really don't know. There are 2 leading theories. One is the capture theory, as you mentioned, and the other is, again, giant impact theory, which we really don't know. So getting the samples back, we first identify its origin, and then we can learn about what was happening at that position in the early days of the solar system.
Yeah. Masaki mentioned potatoes. If you Google Mars's moons, you'll see what he means. I think the technical mathematical term is the potato radius when we start to measure bodies in space, and at a certain point they become round because of the way that gravity works.
Yes, seriously, we are planning a landing mission on the surface of Phobos, which is not a round shape, which is not a sphere shape.
Yeah.
Then you have to worry about the coordinates. how do you define the location on a weird shape? That was the very first argument we had when we were planning the mission.
Well, I kind of interested. You know, it's the Mars missions have got increasingly complicated, increasingly more sophisticated, and of course, we're going to be doing a Mars sample return mission. I just wonder whether there's a bit of competition between all the space agencies, whether the Japanese space agency said, "Oh, well, if JPL can do this on Mars, we're going to do something even better. We're going to land on a Mars moon. That's even harder."
Yeah, so it's both. You know, you're talking about Mars sample return mission, and we're talking about Phobos sample return mission. Technologically, it's very different because of the difference in the size of the gravity. We have performed the asteroid sample return mission. That was a really, really tiny asteroid, 1 kilometer-ish from edge to edge. Now it's Phobos, 20 kilometer-ish, so larger than what we have been before, but still the gravity size is really, really much weaker. So depending on the size of the body, you have a different technology, and we have some nice technology for getting samples back from smaller bodies.
Yeah. Listen, it's been great of you to join us, and I'm really happy you've come, because a lot of the people who are watching this today and joining us for Mars Day around the world, they will have heard of NASA, the American Space Agency, and perhaps certainly people here would have heard of the European Space Agency. But JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, is very active in all different areas of space and space exploration. You're very involved in the International Space Station and the Artemis mission, I know. So just give us a little bit of a thumbnail sketch, if you will, of JAXA and what your aims are as an agency.
Yes, so I'm from the Science Institute of the Japanese Space Agency. We have performed small body sample return mission and other relatively smaller missions. And JAXA also has a human exploration division, which is in charge of the pressurized rover. It is supposed to provide a pressurized rover, a very big one, to the Artemis program, so that the astronauts on the surface of the moon can drive around on the surface. And we are also planning to provide some smaller assets to the Artemis program, so which should enable more newcomers to join the Artemis program. So JAXA has two divisions. One takes care of the bigger items, but the Space Science Institute, we are good at smaller missions, and I hope we can provide a welcome package for newcomers to join the Artemis program.
That's great. It does seem that space exploration, in the early days, it would be certain countries doing certain things. But these days, it seems to be a much more collaborative, affair. So you've got all different countries coming together and working together on different bits for these big grand missions like Artemis.
True. So Artemis should be like a platform to welcome everybody to join. And in order to welcome everybody, the initial hurdle should be lower. Not everybody can plan the whole mission, but they can provide us nice, smaller assets. And those smaller assets are really capable these days. So if you prepare a welcome platform to let those smaller assets on board the program, I think there's a good way of making a nice collaboration.
Yeah. Great. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find out a little bit more about the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, and what you're doing, where would they go? Where can we point them to?
Oh, so I think the SLIM recent lunar lander, which has made a successful pinpoint landing on the surface of the moon. I think that's a nice topic to start with.
SLIM.
So please follow us on the webpage of SLIM mission.
That's right. It seems everyone's going back to the moon now. It seems lots of different countries and lots of different organizations are putting landers on the moon. Just finally, what is the reason of that? Like, why is there suddenly a big rush to get back to the lunar surface?
Yeah, from our perspective, it's really a nice step towards Mars, to be honest. Yeah. And we are really interested in exploring Mars and having a landing mission on Mars. And SLIM was a really, really a nice step. And so in that sense, Moon is like a training field for us. Our ultimate goal is Mars for us.
Got it. Masaki, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're free to go. And good luck with your Mars Moon return sample mission, and we're going to be following that closely, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So there you go. Space is a collaborative effort. So if we're going to go to Mars, which is a long way away and is very difficult, things like stepping stones to the moon is really, really important. Right, who have we got next? We've got Gideon Bradshaw next, I believe.
Hello, Dallas. Yeah,
Hey.
good morning.
Nice to see you. I think this is a little bit of a preamble. You're going to do a little session with us with Steve a little bit later on. So this is just a little sort of hello and how are you. We're at Goon today. We've been talking to astronauts and all kinds of people. But actually, you know, one of the things I don't think we talk about enough is the importance of, the storytelling of space. And that's been a central part of space exploration since the very beginning. I mean, I think of people like, you know, Walt Disney back in the 1950s doing Man in Space with Dr. Werner von Braun and getting the public involved in space. And this is what you do. You work at the BBC. So you're an executive producer at the BBC. Just for people watching, just explain a little bit about what your role is at the BBC, particularly in the sort of science unit.
Okay, so I've been I've done a lot of roles over the years, Dallas. We've met before.
Yes.
As a director, so I started out as a director. Now I manage directors essentially in teams that come together to put, these amazing stories together about our exploits in space. So I'm here today because I've got a very unique sneak preview that nobody has seen outside of the production team for a new series that we're making with Professor Brian Cox. It's going to be called Solar System, appropriate enough. And it's kind of like taking Brian, he's a bit like a driver of a bus in this one. He's going to take you out around the solar system on a series of journeys, 5 journeys across 5 episodes, where he's going to take you to the fire worlds in our solar system, the ice worlds, the storm worlds, what we call dark worlds. These are the kind of the moons and objects between the planets. And then finally, we're going to be looking at the strange worlds, the weirdest, objects out there in the solar system.
So Brian's our tour guide. See, I remember, because I'm ancient, I remember back in the day watching Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and there was a kind of a similar kind of thing. He had a kind of weird 1970s spaceship, and he kind of zipped around. And
the spaceship of the mind.
There we go. That's exactly. It was kind of triangular shape and slightly kind of retro.
Brian isn't literally going to be in a spacecraft, I should point out, but what we are referring to are these amazing spacecraft that are going out into the solar system and making all these amazing discoveries.
I think you should go. I think you should go a bit kind of freestyle and call it the Spaceship of the Mind with Brian Cox. That would. Thank you very much. Well, we're going to see you in a little bit with Steve, and we're going to be exploring the moon together. So we look forward to that. But thank you very much for that sneak preview.
Thanks,
That's terrific. See you in a bit. Thank you. Right, that's Gideon Bradshaw from the BBC Science Unit, and we're going to see. As I mentioned, Gideon and Steve Crabtree, who's another executive producer and director, in a little while. Right, how is your Mars Hour project coming along? I know there's all kinds of resources online. I know you've been doing all kinds of things. Here at Goon in a big room over there somewhere, we've got a room full of kids who are busy working away, making models of goodness knows what. Izzy knows what, so let's go and join Izzy next door and see what's going on.
Thank you, Dallas. So I am here in the conference room at Goon Hello, we've got Budrigi Academy with me. Can I get a big hello? Hi. So what are we up to over here? What you can see here is this is actually Mars. Right here. Mars is in Goon So we've got Eliza and Eva. What are you doing on Mars?
So we're making grabbers to get pieces of Mars, which are over there.
And so I hear that you're deciding where is best to land on Mars. So where have you chosen?
Well, we've chosen place B because other places there's eruptions with volcanoes, so those aren't ideal. But place B is there aren't any volcanoes that are erupting, so it's a good place. And there's evidence that water was there before in the past, so we thought that'd be a good place to look around.
I mean, it sounds like a great place to look around. So how do you make a grabber? What are we doing?
So right now we're doing 2 different ways. We're using one which has a rounded shape to grab it,
and then the other one a hand shape to grab it.
Very good. And do you think you'd like to go to space?
Yes.
Yeah. How about you?
Definitely. I love to look around there.
I mean, we've got some spacesuits around us. That looks quite fun. Maybe we can put those on later. Oh, well, good luck with your lander and your collector. I hope it goes well and you find out lots of new things about Mars that we can send back to the UK Space Agency. All right, have a good day. All right, so I am going to run around to the next group. It's all kicking off here. And so we've gone from the Mars section and over into Power the Moon. So over here we have Mounts Bay Academy and they are making a lunar lander. So let's have a look. Have I got Darwin over here? Hello, Darwin. So can you tell me what you're doing over here?
We're making a lunar landing, which is like we're trying to save a Kinder egg from breaking by making a parachute and like a landing module for it.
So can we show this to the camera?
Sure.
This is Egg Sheeran, which is a very excellent name.
It's excellent.
It's excellent, very good. So what goes into making a successful lander?
Well, you have to sort of think about the parachute that's going to be deployed, because that was the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the balloon. And then you have to sort of think about in my eyes, the testing, like the chamber. Because, like, obviously, if the egg falls out, you have to have, like, a roof, you have to have stability for it. So, basically, what we've done is we filled it up with shredded bits of paper, and we popped the Kinder Egg in there, so, like, so you couldn't feel the G-force if you were in that, and this was, like, real life. So it's going to catch there, and it's hopefully going to slow the fall down. Or it may just break, but, I mean, it's a test.
I mean, that's science, isn't it? You've just got to see what happens. And if you got to go to space, what do you think you'd take with you?
I'd want to take a book because I think I'd get bored. But like then again, I'd really want to take my phone because like obviously then you can get contact even if it takes like 36 minutes.
You think you'd get bored? What about the view?
I know you've got the view, but like I want to be able to take photos, Like I want to be able to come back, and that's the only reason why I want to go to space, show off. Like then you can come back and you can be like, I went to space, What did you do?
Fair enough. And so what's happening for the rest of the day?
I don't particularly know. I presume a guided tour around and just sort of checking out everything.
I mean, did you enjoy the view as you came in? I mean,
it was insane. Just like, because you always see the one big solar dish at Goonhilly, but then now I've just seen like 65 of them, and it's absolutely insane.
It's so good. Oh, well, thank you so much, Darwin. And let's have a shout out to Mounts Bay Academy. But I think I'm going to hand back to you, Dallas, back in the studio.
Thank you very much, Izzy. You're having a good time next door. I hope you're going to come from next door to where I am in a minute, because we're going to be talking all about astronaut training. We're going to go to the European Astronaut Centre in Germany, which is a terrific place. I've been lucky to visit it a couple of times.